Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful criticism. I'm your host, Bennett, Campbell, Ferguson, and I'm here today at Apex with Patrick Belin. How you doing, Patrick?
Pretty good. Having my Pilsner and getting ready to talk about movies again.
That's the way to do it. We are here today to talk about the new Terrence Malick film, Song to Song. We're going to dive deep and unpack the meaning of it, if such a thing is possible. And Patrick, we were texting earlier, and you were saying you weren't as big a fan of this compared to some of the other recent ones we both like Knight of Cups. So yeah, I was just curious to hear why this one didn't strike a chord as much with you.
I think it was a little bit jumbled. It wasn't as focused as I would have hoped that it would have been. I saw what they were doing with it. I felt as if they were taking elements from both To the Wonder and Knight of Cups, and it didn't quite mix up very well for me. As with To the Wonder, I thought they were really getting a little deeper into relationships between people, which was very interesting content. And going on to Knight of Cups, it was very as if it was trying to put the viewer into the subconscious of the characters. It worked with Knight of Cups because it focused on one main character, so you really were able to focus on that experience, whereas in a film like Song to Song, where they tried to take that element and divide it in between different characters, I think was a little unfocused, and it was difficult to really follow the emotional thrust of each of the individual characters, at least in my experiences. So it felt like a bunch of mini films put together as opposed to one main narrative. And on that point, that was also one of my biggest criticisms of it. I don't feel there was enough of a plot to really tie up the mini stories that they were trying to weave together. But that's how I saw it anyways. So.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I personally, I like the film, I think, a little better than you, because I felt, as I often do with Malick, I felt pretty hard for just the sheer power of the images and the emotions.
Sure.
But I definitely agree with what you're saying about it being jumbled. I felt like this it didn't feel as precise as Knight of Cups or To the Wonder. There was some sloppy stuff, and I think an example I like to cite is the ending part where Ryan Gosling says, I got to go back home, my mom's in trouble, my brother's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that, I was kind of like, what? I felt like Terrence Malick could have set that up better.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things like that in the movie where I felt like, there were holes and messy things.
Mm-hmm.
What I did, and also another criticism I have is I'm always curious with Malick films who the central character is going to be, because sometimes it's not who you think.
Yeah.
To the Wonder, they build it as starring Ben Affleck. Well, right. As we both know, Ben Affleck's not the star of To the Wonder at all. It's right. Olga Kurylenko's character.
Right.
And Song to Song was kind of the same. Michael Fassbender was billed in the star. I think he was the most interesting character in the movie.
He was.
The best performance in the movie. But the star of this movie is Rooney Mara, and I have a theory that I hope to be proven wrong, but this is my theory now. I have a theory that no one but David Fincher can get a good performance out of Rooney Mara. and admittedly, I don't want to lay too much at her feet, because I think her character was kind of whiny, and I got tired of her. But I still think with a stronger actress in that role, that would have helped a lot.
I don't know. I don't know that I would criticize Rooney Mara's acting. I think she's a pretty good actress. I think what I could tell is her character just wasn't all that interesting to me.
That's very true. Absolutely. Yeah.
So there are three weaknesses on my part. First of all, I agree with you that Michael Fassbender's character was the most interesting character. They should have played him up a lot more.
Yes.
They should have made him at least a little more fantastical. I mean, this is a movie. This is not real life.
Right.
Secondly, they could have added more. They could have done more treatment to the plot to make it tied together, as I said earlier. And thirdly, that would have made Rooney Mara's character a lot more interesting. You know, if they kind of made this. If they played it as sort of a yin and yang between Rooney Mara's character and Michael Fassbender's character, I think would have been more interesting.
Sure,
it would have been a little more focused, because in this one I felt like they were going between four or five characters a little too much, and it didn't quite work out as well for me. And in terms of plot, I actually consider To the Wonder to be a more superior film to this one.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, To the Wonder, I would say, is my favorite of this modern Malick period, even more than the Tree of Life, you know, which I think is perfect. I mean,
I kind of see this as a series, right? Like a Tree of Life, To the Wonder, Knight of Cups, and now Song to Song.
Yes, absolutely.
I wonder if Song to Song is going to be his last one, and then he's going to move more towards mainstream filmmaking.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if you saw that that article, but where he said, I'm moving away from this process of shooting without a script, and you know.
Oh, good.
And you know, this new movie he's doing now, Radegund, about World War II, is apparently has like a much more like structured script. And,
okay.
Yeah, which I mean, you know, I feel like, you know, is the approach of doing this more improvisational style, is that wrong per se? I'm inclined to say no, because I feel like it works so well for Knight of Cups and To the Wonder.
Sure.
But at the same time, I feel like he does repeat himself a lot. You know, I think ironically to do something more traditional would be challenging himself more right now. You know, which is usually it's the opposite with filmmakers. But I mean that's I don't know. I'm really excited for Radegund. I mean,
I haven't really read up on it, but yeah, that's supposed to be coming out this year, right?
Yeah, I heard he wants to get it out in time for the Oscars. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
We'll see if it gets out of his notorious marathon editing phases.
Yeah.
You know.
But I thought he was in this last series of films, he's been experimenting with a lot of really interesting stuff, and in my opinion, it worked very well in Knight of Cups. So we'll see how he introduces some of these lessons that he's learned into his future films.
Yeah. If he can kind of draw on both styles, I think I'd be excited.
Oh, and for the record, I gave this Song to Song 2.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay, gotcha.
Out of 4 stars, anyways. Yeah.
I'm not. I wasn't sure. Like, I think after the first viewing, I was probably like 3.5 stars, and now I'm leaning more towards 3, because I don't know, I really felt what you said this on the second viewing, that the Rooney Mara character is just not interesting enough to hold the film, even though I liked most of the other parts. But I don't know, one thing I wanted to ask you about is I feel like every Terrence Malick film by design is elusive, like so many images flash by, because he doesn't really do traditional scenes. He does essentially big, long, experimental, kind of impressionistic montages, and so it's often hard to tell what he's getting at. So I was wondering, what do you think he was getting at this time around? Like, what idea was he trying to kind of mine from all of this drama, these characters?
I hate to minimize artists, but I kind of felt like this was an excuse to film Austin. Just to kind of bring Austin out. And that's, to me, another failing of this film, because unlike Knight of Cups, where L.A. was clearly a character in the film.
It was.
I didn't feel like Austin was a presence in this film. I mean, this could have been Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for all I care. You know, there was nothing interesting about it.
There was a sense that, you know, for better or worse, that it could be set in any major city, you know, whereas opposed to, like, I think, you know, L.A. I mean, the L.A. of Knight of Cups is a very, very distinctive place.
Yes,
like,
absolutely. They showed the homelessness. They showed the freeways, the maze of freeways, everything.
Yeah,
you know,
that maze of freeways.
Those quiet moments about LA that you don't see in like tourist pamphlets or in commercial tourism. You know, that's what Malick was bringing out here to really flesh out LA.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Whereas he was doing the same thing about Austin, but I don't know. Maybe it's because the characters in the plot were not that focused that I was having trouble bridging it to what he was doing with Austin, and also going back to my other point about bringing that element from Knight of Cups or that directing style. Anyways, it just didn't work for me. I think it would have worked if he went with, if he moved away from that Knight of Cups style and maybe made it closer to either Tree of Life or his earlier films like Days of Thunder and The Thin Red Line, where here he was able to bring in multiple characters into the thing. I was kind of thinking that going into this, that maybe he would switch gears a little bit and not try to replicate Knight of Cups. But when I saw that he was trying to do to Austin what he did with LA, ultimately it just didn't work out for me. So
it's interesting, I think, thinking about this movie in conversation with Knight of Cups.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely, first of all, I think they were shot like almost back to back. Like to the point like where you had like actors crossing over. I mean Christian Bale was in Song to Song and he got cut because that seems to happen to a lot of people in Terrence Malick movies.
Yeah.
But it's like I feel like if there's the thing about like Knight of Cups is there's very much a criticism of the Hollywood culture and this upscale, LA party scene, and kind of I think we see in Knight of Cups, like with the scenes on the beach, Christian Bale's character, he's trying to get to like a higher spiritual plane where he's more in touch with nature, and there's like I think something similar was going on in Song to Song, but it's no pun intended. It's kind of in a different key. It's and you with Michael Fassbender's character, again, symbolizing this decadence, this wealth and abuse of power. But there's the price he pays for it, I think, is heavier. And that his wife kills herself because of it. And I think like this was a more like this was more of a moral tale in a way, because there's a greater sense of loss in the end, and seeing the movie, like I left feeling kind of shaken and kind of sad, because it's a pretty grim portrait in a lot of ways. And I think the interesting thing is with Fassbender's character, there's no redemption for him.
That's right.
Yeah, they just kind of leave him standing there, and it's like he's in a hell of his own making, and that's the last we see of him, and that surprised me. It was an odd choice.
They did leave his character arc, I guess, unresolved a little bit.
Yes.
I wasn't sure that he really got the lesson, actually.
Yes, because who's to say the character won't, go back to his old life right after that scene,
Exactly.
And that may be, I guess that may be the point,
Well, there's another interesting thing you bring up, the point.
Sure.
What was the point of this movie?
Yeah, that's the question.
I'm having trouble with it. I suppose maybe he's trying to be a little impressionistic and have each each person in the audience kind of latch onto whichever character they want to.
Sure. That could
I
be,
could kind of see that as part of the whole design of the film. But at the same time, it just kind of makes it feel unfocused for me, I suppose.
Definitely, yeah. There's a lack of focus for sure. I think especially probably in the editing, there are moments that maybe go on too long.
Yes.
Or,
I thought it was a little superfluous in some areas.
For sure. As far as the point, as you and I both know, that's so hard to determine with a Malick movie, but
it's kind of a pointless question when talking about Malick films.
Sure. If I had to pick a point, I would pick a point. That sounds like the thing in The Master, but that's another story. I was struck by the end, like Ryan Gosling's character, goes from being a musician to going back to this rural area to help out his family, and he takes this working class job where he's doing physical labor, and then he lies down in the field at the end, and it was kind of interesting. It's like sort of leaving the excess of the music industry behind, but then the movie's not necessarily a critique of the music industry, because Patti Smith is, as herself is such a big character in this, and she is immersed in that industry, and this movie comes across as so centered and so pure, and really understands what life is and what she wants out of life. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It's the idea that, well, this character has to leave it all behind, but that's just because who he is. That's not necessarily because music is evil or something, which I would have hated it if that was what the movie was getting at, because that would just be ridiculous.
And here's another interesting thing about this film that, it's more of a criticism actually. I thought bringing Leaky Lee into this as a main character, as an actual character, to me didn't quite work. She looked really awkward as an actress.
Which one was she? Because I totally missed it.
She was the musician who played Ryan Gosling's ex-girlfriend or ex-fling or something like that.
That was her. Oh, yeah. That's. Oh gosh, I feel really stupid now because I was like, who's that actress?
It was awkward because she was playing herself. She was clearly the superstar Leaky Lee, who was dating Ryan Gosling's character, and she wasn't quite sure what to do with it. So she was acting like herself, which is very awkward, and that really showed on film.
I have to say though that whole thing kind of exemplifies one of the things I liked about the movie though, which was that it would take like weird detours, having that kind of having that thread with Ryan Gosling and Kate Blanchett, or the kind of the seemingly random stuff in Mexico. But while we're talking about musicians, what you said reminds me of something I was really bugged by, which is this is with Ryan Gosling and Rooney Mara. This is really a movie about musicians who don't seem to play much music. It's like judging by this movie, all musicians do is hang around and kind of mope and stuff, and I think it's kind of funny when Rooney Mara, I think in the end she's playing in Patti Smith's band, and it's Rooney Mara would get recruited by Patti Smith. I mean if I didn't know Malick better, I would say that was intentionally funny. I don't think it was.
It's funny you bring up La La Land because my alternative title for this movie was The Other La La Land.
I know, yeah. Well, it's funny because I thought about his singing, and and Ryan Gosling, of course, is not a trained singer, and I thought he was a little stiff in La La Land, but I thought he ultimately brought enough gumption that he sold me, on his singing. But in this, I thought his voice sounded so weak, and I think this film was shot before La La Land, and it's funny because there's that scene where a woman says to him, "Oh, I hear you have songs on the radio," and it's really? You know, it's like, who would let this guy on the radio? You know, it's like this. You know?
Well, now that we're talking about Ryan Gosling's character, I would have to say this is probably his best work as an actor.
In terms of his sheer acting, he was great, and
Yes.
and I thought, like that scene where he's like putting on the tiny shirts, like he was fun and self-deprecating and Gosling-esque, and that kind of was novel, I think, in this sort of movie.
That's the interesting thing about Malick's films, especially in this past few films where he goes with an unscripted style.
Yes,
I think I could see how this is like catnip for actors because it allows them like almost infinite creative freedom as an actor. That's probably
totally,
why they gravitated towards this project and they signed on to it so quickly.
Totally,
because it's so unscripted. It's you don't have to deal with the executive production level, etc.
Yeah.
I think like in these films, like with Brad Pitt or with Rooney Mara, or all these other actors that have been in these past 4 films, I think this is probably the purest in their craft you'll ever see them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, like I was feeling like I'm, watching Michael Fassbender in this. He seems so liberated. Like there's that scene where he like kind of jumps in the air and spins around, and it's just like there's just so much. There's so much crazy stuff that feels so like vital and real.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me did you hear like the story about the like what Malick was calling like torpedoing into scenes? Like I don't I know he did this on Night of Cups. I don't know if he did it beforehand, but on Night of Cups he was doing this thing called torpedoing, where he would like say to actors, okay, you're going to go into the scene, but the other actors have no idea you're coming, so you're just going to go in there and they have to roll with it. So there's that scene in the right after the strip club where Christian Bale's eating with his friend, and then Teresa Palmer just comes in, and Bale didn't know she was going to show up, but she showed up and he had to react, and I think that's pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, I can imagine if I were an actor, I wouldn't consider that a bad thing. I would consider that exciting.
Yeah.
It's a more organic way of acting.
Yes, it is more organic.
So, with that said, it just makes Leaky Lee's introduction in Song to Song more awkward because you can tell she's playing herself.
Sure.
So you could really see the difference. It's like night and day, and it brought me out of the film actually.
Yeah, because in this style, I think like the risk is that if an actor is not rolling with it and not attuned to it, there's going to be problems because you have to fit into the fabric because it's really like one big tapestry.
Right. Because she's not a trained actor.
Right.
She doesn't quite understand what Malick was getting at.
Yeah.
So she couldn't really vibe or create a chemistry with Ryan Gosling.
Sure.
And I could see it, and it was so cringeworthy.
Well, and like it's in such contrast to Natalie Portman in this movie, who I think is so great, and I think maybe part of the reason it's so great is she had worked with him before. This.
What movie again?
In Night of Cups.
Oh, that's right.
Like I feel like this was old hat to her, probably, and it showed. It showed. I thought her scenes were really powerful. Yeah. But another thing I wanted to ask you about is I was thinking about kind of the spectacle of this movie, and I was so much about it is about the imagery, in some cases for better or worse, more than the plot. And I kind of absurdly watching this started thinking about James Cameron and Avatar, and the idea that James Cameron I kind of thinks in terms of giving people a big spectacle as much as a story. And I was thinking it's almost like Malick is doing that on an indie level, because a lot of the the points he makes in this movie are are points he's made in other movies that don't necessarily need to be rehashed. So it's like, I was wondering what you thought of the idea that maybe like this is like almost a non-narrative, movie to an extent.
I felt, I don't know. I don't like to second guess artistic motivation or be cynical about this, but I felt this was just simply an homage to Austin for him.
Gotcha.
And I suppose he's passionate about the Austin music scene, which fair enough, It was like an excuse to play with some of the things he was doing with Through the Wonder and Night of Cups.
Sure, yeah, it's very much in that vein. Yeah,
so I don't know. That's just my reading of it.
No, yeah, I think that's there's a fair point there. I mean, he was. I just found out like recently, like he apparently went to high school in Austin, which is kind of funny to think about him at that age. But yeah. I mean, it's interesting to contemplate, and gosh, I feel like I was going to say something, but I mean, you could maybe even make this argument on any of his movies. Like, it's definitely an indulgence, like
Well, they're all in Texas, aren't they? Well, except Night of Cups.
That's a good question. I don't know. Well, like, where was Days of Heaven?
I think it was in Texas.
Okay. So yeah. So and then
obviously not Thin Red Line, but
right. But then I mean the Tree of Life.
Tree of Life was in Texas.
Yeah. And So the Wonder might have been in Oklahoma.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
but,
I think it was in Oklahoma.
But I mean, like any of these movies, it's so vague that it could be a lot of places. Like
see, in To the Wonder, he wasn't really playing off Oklahoma so much. It wasn't central to the point of what he was making, which I think worked because it encouraged me as a viewer to focus on the characters.
Right.
The interaction between the characters, and I thought that worked.
I think so too. Yeah, and I think like one of the reasons why I think To the Wonder, continues to endure so well is like it offers really, interesting juxtapositions in the way that Song to Song doesn't, because you start out in France and then going from France to the Midwest, and but then like the different parts of the Midwest, the kind of like more farmy area and the more like suburban area of motels and huge crosswalks and stuff. Like, I don't know, I really like that. Like I responded to that for sure.
Well, to clarify, he filmed this movie and Night of Cups around the same time, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was exactly back to back, but I feel like it's pretty close. Yeah.
I think that was a problem because if Lubeski was shooting in a certain way, shooting LA in a certain style, and simultaneously shooting Austin in a certain style, and that's the only primary footage they had to deal with when editing Song to Song, then I could see how this is a problem because from the very first few shots of Song to Song, they were clearly introducing Austin and the music scene as a central character, but they didn't do anything with it.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was a big problem for me. I mean, it worked in Night of Cups, but I think it was a detriment for them to film these films back to back. I think if that was the case, because obviously there's only so much time to work with. They're kind of in two places at the same time. It's kind of hard to do that.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
there you go.
Well, yeah, like I'm kind of like going back to the stuff with Ryan Gosling's family, like so many other Malick heroes, he's got father and brother issues, and but in Song to Song, I felt like unclear of what that was, whereas in Night of Cups with Brian Dennehy and Wes Bentley,
they brought that up.
Yeah, I felt like he without saying a lot and while still keeping a lot mysterious and vague, in a good way, he really clearly established what that relationship was between the two brothers and the father, and I could have used like more of that clarity here, I guess.
Right. It was a little more focused.
Yes, it was more focused.
Whereas in Song to Song, we ended up going into a different character arc and wondering, okay, so what happened to the other character?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I know any character arc in this. I think I always felt like just get us back to Fassbender or something like.
Yeah, I was hoping for something a little more fantastical with this character, where maybe not on the level of American Psycho, where he ends up like murdering people, but something a little more colorful, I suppose.
Sure. Do you feel like his antics maybe could have been pushed farther, like he wasn't debaucherous enough, maybe?
No. I guess what I'm talking about is the script should have been more colorful to allow the character to be more colorful, as opposed to the character leading the script.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But then going back to the original part where this is largely unscripted, so it's kind of hard to do that. So I don't know. I guess my main point in this movie is what Malick and Lubezki were doing in the storytelling style works best if it's a single narrative. But if they're trying to create a plot with multiple characters, I think it's very difficult to import that style into this movie.
That's a good point.
That's the point I'm trying to make here.
Well, I didn't even think about this until you mentioned it, but I think the last 3 big movies he's done, really all had a single character they centered around. Like even though the Tree of Life was so vast and was about the cosmos and the history of the planet, it's really just about one man. Granted, he's played by Sean Penn and the young boy Hunter McCracken, who's probably not a boy anymore. That movie took so long, but it was really centered around one guy, and To the Wonder, centered around one woman. Knight of Cups, of course, all that Christian Bale, and this even though I feel like Rooney Mara maybe had the most screen time, I don't know that she was the main character any more than Gosling or Fassbender or even Natalie Portman.
Right. And I suppose that's my problem with the film. It left me feeling like it was unfocused.
Sure, yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the directing style. If they went with a different directing style, I'm not saying super conventional storytelling, but
Yes, thank you.
That made perhaps if they scripted this a little better, not completely unscripted, because I'm not sure that worked.
It might help with some of those parts that came across as fuzzy or not fully committed.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, here's something I wanted to ask you about, and this kind of took me by surprise. The romance in the movie between Rooney Mara's character and Berenice Marlowe's character, and I was I thought that in a Malick film that was kind of novel because his movies are so heteronormative,
True.
but they didn't really do much with it, and so I was thinking it kind of felt like a missed opportunity. I was wondering if you felt that way maybe as well.
It was very much I forget what the appropriate word here is, but like a sidetrack.
Yes, it was
I felt they could have integrated this a little better. Say, for instance, or made it more interesting. Say, for instance, she was like Fassbender's ex-wife or something.
Sure.
That would have made for a more interesting dynamic between all the characters.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. Yeah, no. I mean, if they found a way to pull her into the story.
Because she also has that power player side to her.
Yes.
So it would make sense that that she and Fassbender would have been a couple at one point.
Sure, yeah.
It would have just made for a more interesting plot altogether.
Yeah, it's interesting. And well, it's interesting kind of because Fassbender is sort of so on his own for that last half or so.
So this is I suppose, I'm just thinking of this now, but suppose it feels like the missed opportunity for me would be to kind of one-up the movie Closer.
Oh, interesting.
They could have created a narrative similar to that, but Malick style. I thought it would have been interesting.
I didn't make the connection, but it makes sense. Like, you know, when you bring it up, because I mean that was, you know, I guess a love square,
sure,
or a quadruple love triangle, you know.
And you also have this completely morally ambiguous character in Fassbender that they could have played with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Well, you've got Wiggs being a central part of the plot, you know, like in Closer. So I mean,
sure.
And Natalie Portman too.
Oh, wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
And it's got Natalie Portman in it, and she's not the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like funny, like it's Closer. I think what was really striking about that movie was that it's such a cynical like portrayal of those characters, and
sure, that was maybe that's a little overly cynical.
And it's kind of. It's kind of interesting, like Malick, for better or worse, his like head is like so not there. Like
he's not there.
Yeah. But I think in terms of like kind of, you know, like making a really interesting love triangle, like he could have like pushed it more in that, you know, Closer direction, so it's not like, you know, these, you know, two character actors are gonna, you know, fight over the ex-girl with the dragon tattoo, you know?
Right. Anyways, that's just the plot I wish it had.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what I would change. I mean, I almost feel like this is a movie that could be like dramatically improved, like with another edit. You know, like I mean, because there's so much footage, and I mean, this is one thing that kind of surprised me is this is a bit longer than Night of Cups With the Wonder. I think it's over 2 hours.
Is it?
Yeah, and so it's like, I mean, there are parts that could be, you know, tightened, you know, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe there's like footage he didn't use that's really good that could be, you know, good. I mean, I know Michael Fassbender, you know, kept talking about how great, you know, Val Kilmer is, and I did think he was really good in this, you know, and Fassbender was saying he regretted that Val Kilmer didn't have a bigger role in the final cut. So
yeah, I was expecting Val Kilmer to have a bigger role in this.
Yeah, which, by the way, how cool was it when he sliced open the amp with the chainsaw?
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that was just, that was a nice bit of superfluousness.
And what else is there to say about this movie? I like that there was a lot of realness to it, though.
Yes.
I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it was mostly unscripted, and it allowed a lot of creative freedom for the characters.
Yeah.
So I think that allowed for a lot of realness, not just in the main characters, the main actors, but also in the supporting roles, the supporting actors, like the family and all that.
Yeah.
I thought it allowed for a lot of realness, and I really appreciated that.
I would say that that's something that really resonated with me as well. Like one thing I like in this that I like in really most of his films is there's a lot of scenes just of characters kind of playing around and, you know, like being like sort of playful and childish. And I think one of the best scenes in this is when, you know, Ryan Gosling, you know, throws the toilet paper roll out the window and it kind of like floats in the breeze like a flag, and I just like that just reminds me of like, you know, like some like sort of like pointless but kind of amusing thing like I would do, or like someone I knew would do, you know, like those kinds of, you know, like off the cuff moments. I think you were really good too.
And I have a feeling those were off the cuff moments, and this format allows the actors to really flesh out the characters in their own creative way.
Yes,
and
yeah.
you could see that it looked genuine.
Yeah,
it's a level of acting that you don't see in a lot of movies.
No,
that have been produced to death.
That's why I always feel like I always feel like with, you know, these newer Terrence Malick movies, I feel like bigger things are happening here than maybe a lot of people realize. Like he's rewriting like the rules of like what a movie is and how you make it in a way. Like I mean, you know, he's, you know, saying things like, you know, no, I'm not gonna do scenes, I'm gonna do fragments, you know, no, I'm not gonna, you know, have these perfectly composed shots, I'm gonna have the camera constantly moving, you know, constantly, you know, zipping around this poetic way that, and, you know, like Emmanuel Lubezki is such a great cinematographer that it actually doesn't seem, you know, as, you know, on the fly as I think it probably was.
Yeah.
Because he just has it as a cinematographer.
Well, I think it also has to do with his chemistry with Terrence Malick. I think he just understands what Malick is trying to get at.
Yeah.
And he just, you know, he focuses his shots and everything that way.
Yeah.
And I thought it worked beautifully in Night of Close.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is why I gave it my top spot in last year's top 5 or whatever.
Nice. Oh my god, yeah, I mean, that was
They nailed it.
Yeah. That movie just continues to amaze me. Like, and like, here's actually, this is the thing I wanted to talk to you about for a while. You know, we were talking last time about I said there's a cut from a surging wave to an umbrella opening. So I recently rewatched the movie and I realized I'd remembered it wrong. It's actually a cut from a kid running to an umbrella opening. And so it's like, I like that there's always like something new to discover, and the effect was still the same. It was still a brilliant cut. You know, I mean, it was the same like kind of feeling of, you know, motion to motion, you know, which he's so good at.
That's what I like about what Malick and Lubezki was doing. They were trying to capture those quiet moments in terms of what happens in characters. You don't really get a sense of the everyday life of characters in films because it's just the nature of films. You know, a lot of conventional films they follow a very unique, well, not unique, but a distinct storyline, a plot line.
Kind of rigid to a certain degree.
It's very rigid and it's very on the rails.
Yeah.
Whereas what Malick is trying to do is trying to take things off the rails and really get the audience into what the characters are all about. And I thought that really worked in Night of Cups.
Yeah, I think that's such I love the metaphor of like on and off the rails, especially since train tracks have been a visual motif in some of those films. Like I think about, like, you know, going back to The Wonder. Some of my favorite scenes are the scenes where it seems like Ben Affleck's investigating some pollution of some kind, and like I don't know quite what's going on in those scenes. I mean, it's kind of mysterious, but what I liked about it and what I feel the point was you know showing, you know, like what you were talking about, his day-to-day life, you know, his work, his routine, day in and day out, and certainly you get that with Night of Cups. Like I just love the scene with the earthquake, and then, you know, like after the quake, you know, it cuts to another scene where, you know, Bale's just like kneeling down, looking at his phone, and just kind of like things go back to normal. You know, life goes on. You know, there's not like a big event you have to rush the story to because it's about, you know, very simple, small, you know, seemingly unremarkable things.
I don't know any other filmmaker who gets away with doing this type of experimentation.
No, me neither. No, definitely not.
What's his face? I think Godard is probably the closest I can think of.
Yes.
But in terms of getting funding nowadays for this type of film, I don't know where funding for this type of movie would come from.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wonder about this because I sometimes go on Box Office Mojo just to see like how much are these movies making exactly, and as far as I can tell, not one of them has made a profit. Like maybe Days of Heaven because that was such a small movie, but I'm not even sure about that. And I think it's I don't know. I haven't researched it, but the only thing I can think of is that producers must just like what he's doing, and obviously actors like Brad Pitt think it's cool and they want to do it. I mean, he even came out and narrated Voyage of Time.
Right. So I guess we're getting into a question that interests me a lot.
Cool.
Will we ever see movies like Knight of Cups and these type of movies be made, if not for Malick? And
sure.
I feel that Malick alone would not have gotten these movies made if he didn't have friends.
Yeah.
If he didn't have guys like Lubeski or actors at the caliber of Fassbender and Brad Pitt supporting him, would he have gotten funding for this? If I recall correctly, Knight of Cups and Song to Song were not funded by major Hollywood studios.
No, definitely not.
So, but it's a shame because he's trying to push the art form forward.
Yes,
And he did it brilliantly in Knight of Cups.
Absolutely, yeah, no question.
Will we see a project pushing things beyond Knight of Cups in the future? I'm not so sure.
That's the question. I mean, the optimist in me really wants to say yes,
Sure.
but the rest of me doesn't see how that could happen.
The economic and political reality of Hollywood seems to double down on conventional filmmaking.
Yeah.
And if anything, they're pushing towards this sort of, it's not really a film, it's more like a tourism video.
Yeah.
For it's like they'll have a conventional film in place, but they'll put commercials inside of the films.
Yeah.
Like 5-minute commercials. The most egregious example I can think of is the last Transformers movie.
Right, because you were talking about the Hong Kong.
Yes, so it went from Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 to this 5-minute visit Hong Kong film. And then they had this, not an Act 4, but like a postscript. And so we went from Act 1, 2, 3, visit Hong Kong, and postscript. So is this the trend in filmmaking now? I mean, it's so disgusting.
It is disgusting, yeah, and I think something that worries me is like we mentioned La La Land a little earlier, and I mean La La Land was my favorite film of last year, but it was admittedly a very, very conventional movie in a lot of ways, and even that movie was hard to get made. Damien Chazelle spent 6 years trying to get it made, a movie that's basically a classic romantic comedy.
Sure.
It took him 6 years to try and get the studios to make it, and it's I think wow, if something that seems like that seems like a pretty easy sell, has a hard time getting made, I don't know how you beat Terrence Malick unless you're Terrence Malick and you've cultivated this goodwill over the years, and you've got people like Christopher Nolan saying The Thin Red Line is one of the greatest films of all time, it's just
it's probably the best war movie I've ever seen, in my opinion.
I have to admit I still need to see it, man.
I wish they would re-release it in theaters.
They should. I wish they would.
I haven't seen it in theaters. I only saw it on DVD.
I wish they would release all of these movies in theaters.
Yeah.
I would. I mean, kind of like what you're saying with the Thin Red Line. I've only ever seen, Days of Heaven on my TV, and I remember reading in Leonard Maltin don't see this, on your TV. It's not going to be the same.
Exactly.
I get it.
And that's why I've never seen Night of Cups on the DVD or Blu-ray or whatever.
Oh, gotcha. I can understand why.
I felt like he was really. The style is really meant for the big screen.
Yes, yeah, it's so true, yeah. I think that comes really back to Lubezki and the way the camera movement is so like fast yet fluid and graceful and the kind of like I always go back to that that party scene at Night of Cups where there's a shot where like Bale's like kind of like he's sort of like falling back on a chair and then he falls on the ground and just the way the camera's tilted, it's like it really toys with your sense of balance and what's up and what's down, and it's.
I remember feeling anxious when during that scene.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of a little stomach churning, and it's like, I mean, that's obviously not going to have the same effect with the small screen.
Isn't this interesting? They made a film made for the big screen, but there were no explosions, no buildings crashing. None of that bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know. It's like I think I don't know. I think Hollywood, like conventional Hollywood, often doesn't understand like what you can do with the big screen. Like it reminds me of a great, Christopher Nolan quote where he was talking about, in Batman Begins we blew up a monastery, and then so for The Dark Knight we're like, we don't want to go big in like the obvious way, and he says, I said to the studio, don't worry about the scope, because the Joker standing in the middle of the street with a machine gun, there's no explosion or anything, but that's going to be a huge image.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think of that kind of in conjunction with Malick. Like there's that great scene where in Song of Song where Ryan Gosling and Rooney Mara are under the underpass, and then they climb up to like the freeway above and emerge into the light, and it's like that's what the big screen was made for.
Sure.
Stuff like that,
Big moments.
Yeah.
Not so much spectacle,
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about that distinction, that there's a difference between spectacle and big,
For sure.
Yeah. And I always thought like the Tree of Life was my first introduction to Malick, and I always thought it was interesting, this is. I remember thinking this is just a small movie about a family, really. And it feels so larger than life. It feels like an epic. And
well, yeah, because he was playing with the concept of deep time.
Yes.
In that film.
Yes.
He was juxtaposing these daily dramas, these daily family dramas against the reality of deep time. And the universe and the cosmos, with the dinosaurs and all that.
Right. Putting it in the context of this larger story.
It brings everything in it situates the drama in a very different context, I think.
Yeah.
If they were to remove that, it would have felt a lot more conventional.
Yeah.
But because he was playing it against this concept of deep time, I think it really made for a different experience with Tree of Life, and that's what I appreciated about it.
I think so, yeah, and I think I like that he even brought that back a bit in Night of Cups, because at the beginning of Night of Cups, there were like some shots of the Earth from space.
Right.
And I found that really, really interesting that this is a motif with him, like kind of, like putting things in the context of the history of the universe. And like I think that's exciting, because I think one thing that he understands that a lot of filmmakers don't is that, like everybody's, life, no matter how, quote unquote normal it is. Everybody's life, I think, feels like a big epic to them,
Sure.
because, human emotions are, pretty strong things. And, I think, like by, like what you said, like, like getting into to deep time and like saying, you know, okay, I'm telling the story of this little boy, but you know, his story exists within the same continuum that the dinosaurs existed in. It's kind of creating this sense of, I think, what life feels like, you know?
Yeah, well, it was deeply existential with Tree of Life, and I think he was trying to introduce a little bit of that with Knight of Cups.
Yes.
And I thought that worked. That was a good way to introduce the story of the main character. I think.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic, yeah. Yeah, oh God, I mean, I could talk forever about that opening scene on, you know, he's out in the wilderness and, you know, in his weird, you know, purple dress shirt, you know, it's so, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like, that's as iconic as you can get in the movie.
Right.
Well, let's see, I'm trying to think, do we have any other Malick-y things we need to delve into before we sign off? Should we talk about we touched on this before, but should we get into the future for him a bit and the possibilities out there?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I made this point to you earlier, but I felt like this should be the last of this experimental phase that he's been going through.
Right.
I'm not saying that he should go back to making conventional films. I don't think he can ever make a conventional film.
That's true, yeah.
I have I don't know if this is true or not, but I could see him getting back into the Hollywood system and doing more conventional scripts, but in his own way.
Well, it almost feels like it's trending that way because all of a sudden he's appearing in public and doing interviews.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
What's up with that? Like, It's like, clearly changes the foot, you know?
Yeah, I think so.
I see what you mean because, like, you know, about this maybe being the end of an experiment because, for the first part of his career, he only did period films. And then he does The Tree of Life, which is a period film and a contemporary film combined. And then, you know, now with The Wonder and Cup Song to Song, we've got sort of a trilogy of contemporary films, all in the same style. I think 3 is a good number to leave on, and I think with Rodegund, you know, with him, you know, going back to do a period film, you know, a World War II movie, no less. I think that's a great way to shake things up and just say it's like, okay, I've conquered this one, you know, horizon. Time to, you know, set out on a new journey because he's an ambitious guy, and I think, you know, he needs to constantly be challenging himself to survive, like any great filmmaker would.
Okay, here's another interesting spin that I just thought of right now. I wonder if part of his motivation for doing these series of films is to make a political statement against the Hollywood system.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah.
And if I were to kind of deduce a statement, it would be, you don't need to overproduce films. You don't need to overscript films to make them successful and to make them work on the screen.
Yeah.
Because what he's been doing these past 3 or 4 films is going against the Hollywood system.
Absolutely.
And I think he has a lot of powerful support in Hollywood. If you look at the cast he's working with, like Fassbender and Brad Pitt, who are in support of that.
It's like
political statement.
It's kind of like his actors are like, it's a who's who of, you know, who's hot right now.
Sure.
It's like, and it's like, I think, you know, by being in this, you know, they're saying, you know, I support this, you know, because there was no way Michael Fassbender, you know, got paid the kind of money for this. Sure. He got paid for X-Men Apocalypse or something.
If you put it in purely financial terms, you could make the point for Hollywood that this has been a complete failure, considering that it hasn't made as much money as Transformers or whatever, some other bullshit like that.
Right, exactly.
In terms of moving the art forward, I think it was a huge success.
Yes, yeah. And I feel like you, like, I feel like, you know, I mean, I feel like that's the acid test, you know. Does it move the art forward? You know, and because if a movie's not moving the art forward, then no matter, you know, how much money it makes, I think to a degree it's ultimately irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I saw him. I saw Doctor Strange in November, and I actually wouldn't have seen it had I not had a ticket to an advanced screening. I didn't want to pay to see it, and I was like, it's like, did I have a good time? Yes. Did I think it was fun? Yes. But I mean, did it make me depressed that that's the best, one of the most powerful studios in Hollywood can do? Yeah, it made me depressed. And, I think there's like no, better, cure than than watching a really good Malick film, because it's so the opposite of that. And I like what you said about, him making an argument against the Hollywood system, because you can really just like see his sort of contempt for the system, even in the stories of these movies. Like, I mean, the story of
Night of Cups was definitely in contempt of the system.
yeah. I mean, Night of Cups, like, this guy is a part of the system, and he's a zombie. He
hates himself.
He does, yeah. He's so drained by it, and his senses are so dull that he really takes pleasure in nothing. And I think also like in Night of Cups, he's so obsessed with his love life, and he's like I think he even says some line in voiceover like where are you? Like, and clearly he's speaking to like his true love, and I thought it was very telling that he kind of it rejects the Hollywood narrative of like romance solving everything. And I mean, as we both know, the ending's pretty amorphous of that film, but it kind of looks like at the end like he's isolating himself and sort of going off on his own, and that's a pretty big statement against Hollywood storytelling in and of itself.
Well, sure, and story-wise, I thought it makes a powerful statement in terms of power and privilege are not all it's cracked up to be if you have to sell your soul in the process.
Yeah.
I thought that did that very well. It's almost a spiritual part,
Yeah, I think spiritual is the word, and I always think about like that idea of power and privilege not being what they're cracked up to be. And my first reaction is always going, oh, but we all know that. And then my second reaction is, but I'm not sure we do.
Do we know what
the world
it feels
doesn't,
like? And I felt like Malick was trying to put us into those shoes with Night of Cups.
Yes,
very well.
Yeah. And he was really, I think you could argue he, tried with, admittedly less success to do the same thing in Song to Song. Like, this is clearly like, this is definitely one of those themes you can't let go of,
Okay, so this is what I kind of feel like this is possibly the point of Song to Song to me. Is he's trying to bring out the rigid, just the daily rigor of the music scene.
Sure.
Kind of like how he was bringing out the entertainment scene in Night of Cups.
Yes, yeah.
I could see that.
I could see that too, and I think like it kind of reminds me of the beginning. It looks like all those guys are at a concert and they're kind of running in slow motion.
Sure.
And there's that D Encore song playing, and like it felt like he was trying to like immerse us in the scene, and what you mentioned with the rigors, like one of the rare scenes where like a main character is like really truly involved in music is Michael Fassbender. He's telling a musician something, or I can't remember what because it flashed by so fast, but it's like you said, it is trying to bring out this world, and maybe he struggled a little more to conjure it up because he's not a musician, he's a filmmaker, and he maybe doesn't he doesn't get the music scene in the way that he seems to get Hollywood.
But he also brings in a lot of real life musicians into this film, so I wonder if they were his his informants.
Yeah, I would not.
Content-wise,
I would not be surprised. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of seasoned performers too, like Patti Smith, Iggy Pop, and new performers like Lee Lee.
Right.
So I wonder if they were his inspiration for, what you would call a script.
Yeah, I can see that being the case because
To get behind the scenes.
right, because he's so obsessed with like authenticity.
Sure.
And I saw, I listened to I don't know if you heard that South by Southwest interview, but Michael Fassbender was saying like that Terrence Malick when they're making the movie was like calling out things like it looks like you're posing, it's not real enough. And I mean that must be why he wanted to bring real musicians in there to like give it the texture and not be kind of building that world without any reference to what that world really is.
To be kind of like advisors on the set.
Yeah,
the whole
totally.
production.
Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's like bringing Harrison Ford back to The Force Awakens.
Okay. Still stand by my review of 2.5 stars.
Gotcha.
I felt it could have been tightened up in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, even though I like the film, I feel like like this. I mean, anyone looking, I think, for kind of at least I think to our minds, like a movie like Night of Cups, where each moment feels like it's perfectly honed, like
Right.
like, each moment feels like exactly the right length. This is with Song to Song, it's a little messier. It was like maybe it's rushed, which I think goes back to what you said, that it's probably the right moment to move on. And he's had a great run, I think, with this scripted style. But I mean,
I think I'm going to call it the unscripted series.
Yeah, the unscripted what?
The unscripted series.
Yeah, the unscripted series. Yeah. Is it like the unscripted trilogy?
Actor-led unscripted series, I think is how I would describe it.
Yeah. Well, but I just have to throw in one more thing. There's a great making of documentary on the Night of Cups DVD, and one of the rare making of documentaries that I actually think said something interesting. And they were talking about how Christian Bale, one afternoon, he just got sent off, with Imogen Poots and a GoPro camera, and no crew, just totally alone. And some of that footage ended up in the movie. And how cool is that Terrence Malick created this world where something like that is not only not possible just as kind of an experiment, but is like a practical thing that actually helped him complete the story. I mean,
that to me, stuff like that proves how he has a lot of respect for the craft of acting, and he has a lot of respect for his actors.
Absolutely.
And I could see why that would win him a lot of friends in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because the Hollywood system is almost the complete opposite of that.
Yeah,
Everything is done by the marketing department these days.
It is, yeah.
It's like why even bother having a director? The marketing department are the ones who direct films now.
Yeah,
and it's so
it's
so disgusting and depressing.
It is. I can't remember if we talked about Rogue One yet, but I walked out of that movie so dejected. It's so much. I felt like it kind of symbolized this sort of mechanical mentality of trying to hit these beats to play to the audience, but without actually trying to move an audience or frankly even entertain them, because it's you get I don't know, you're getting I think it goes back to the Transformers thing, like where I mean, from what you described it, that movie is like it's made for a market. You know, it's not made because it comes from the depths of Michael Bay's soul. It sounds like it's
Does
made.
Michael Bay have a soul?
I know that. I think that I always wonder about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to wrap up the song to songs?
Yeah. Let's wrap up song to song. Yeah. I guess if I would have to say. Anything in conclusion, I think, I definitely agree with you. Like, this is a flawed movie. I like it. I like it ultimately, and I think I think but I think for like people like you and me who like care about Malick and really like respond to his style, I would say, definitely, if you haven't seen the movie, if it's still playing anywhere, don't definitely don't expect like Night of Cups. Definitely don't expect something quite as polished.
Yeah, true.
Did you have any final thoughts?
Nope. I think, like I said earlier, I stick to my 2.5 star review. Not to say that I hated the movie, but I just felt it could have been tightened up in areas, and it could have been more.
For sure, yeah.
And the realization that I came out of this talk today was that perhaps he was trying to bring us behind the scenes into the music industry, and I felt that point could have been made stronger in the actual final part of the film.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think. I feel like like any movie about musicians, like you want like a really show-stopping musical number, and I would have liked it if there could have been a more of a sense of like for our main characters, like what it's really like to be a musician in that world. And another thing I wanted to speak to. What you're saying, further to what you're saying about the industry, like I was thinking, maybe like if this is the unscripted series, maybe within the unscripted series, this and Night of Cups are kind of a duology, like where it's like it's plugged into a creative industry and it's critiquing it, showing the nuances of it, and that I don't know. That's definitely something that stands out to me. But I mean, it's honestly, like all of these movies, I think it's going to be years before I, if ever, that I figure out exactly what's going on. That's the journey, Well, I think that's all we got. And once more, I'm Bennett Campbell Ferguson here with Patrick Belin at Apex, and. If you like what you heard here, please click thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and check out all our reviews on THOmoviereviews.wordpress.com.
All right, see you, folks.
Happy movie watching.